On the 12th day, 1,400 miles from land, the VHF crackled to life with words that stopped Lucas Hale's heart.
That's my voice.
Mayday, Mayday. This is sailing vessel Odyssey, position 17 degrees 40 minutes north, 140 degrees 12 minutes west, knockdown in 50-foot seas, cabin flooding, require immediate assistance.
Odyssey. That's my boat.
He stumbled to the chart table and checked the GPS. The coordinates the voice had given were his own.
That position is right here, right now.
The voice continued, cold and steady, describing a knockdown in 50-foot seas and water flooding the cabin, events that hadn't happened yet. Then the transmission cut to static.
This isn't possible.
He logged the time, the coordinates, every undeniable word. Then he sat in the quiet cabin, waiting for what he'd just heard to come true. He listened to the silent radio waiting. The first wave of the coming storm was not wind, but dread.
It has to be a malfunction. Atmospheric skip, bouncing a mayday from somewhere else.
He pulled the VHF and inspected it. No loose wires, no blown fuses. The radio was fine.
But a random broadcast wouldn't know the boat's name, or these coordinates.
The weather facts chattered and spat out a fresh forecast. A compact low-pressure system was forming 200 miles west on a direct intercept course.
A squall. Right on the timeline the voice described.
He looked through the porthole. The western sky was building with dark, muscular clouds.
50-foot seas. Cabin flooding. The words are burned into my mind.
He opened the logbook and forced himself to write. Received phantom distress call. Preparing for worst. He went through the storm checklist methodically, but his hands shook on every snap, shackle, and line. He sat in the dim cabin, watching the clock. He told himself it was nothing, but his hands wouldn't stop shaking. 8 hours after the phantom mayday, the squall hit like a closing door. The wind pinned Odyssey on her beam. The sea stacked into mountains of black water. Then a wave the voice had promised lifted the stern and knocked the boat onto her side.
This is it. 50-foot seas, knockdown. Just like the transmission said.
The companionway hatch gave way. Water poured into the cabin, exactly as the voice had described.
Cabin flooding. I am living the mayday. I heard 8 hours ago.
He vomited over the rail, salt and bile burning his throat. The sea gave no mercy. A second wave hammered the hull, driving the mast deeper into the cold sea.
My own voice, predicting this hell. It wasn't a malfunction. It was a warning.
When the boat finally righted, the cabin was knee-deep in seawater. But Lucas was still alive. Lucas spent hours pumping water and plugging leaks. The storm had shredded his mainsail, but the hull held.
I never keyed the mic. I never sent a mayday. Why did I hear my own voice?
He checked the VHF log. There was no record of a transmission from Odyssey during the storm, only the incoming phantom call from 8 hours earlier. He replayed the digital recording. His blood ran cold as he heard the distress call again, reliving the predicted knockdown.
Every word matched. The heel. The flooding, the terror. It wasn't a hoax, it was a foretelling.
He opened his logbook and wrote the full sequence, times, coordinates, and the exact details that had just come true. Then he sat in the damp cabin, staring at the VHF. The silence on channel 16 was absolute.
The sea is quiet now, but that means the warning was real. If the first one was real.
He didn't finish the thought. Dread settled over him like a wet blanket. He knew the quiet wouldn't last. He curled his hand around the radio handset, waiting. The first wave had been words. The next could be anything. Days passed in a haze of silent waiting. The VHF stayed mute on channel 16, but Lucas couldn't stop listening.
I've replayed the recording 100 times. The voice is mine. It can't be faked.
He combed through his logbooks, trying to find a rational explanation. Atmospheric ducting, an echo, psychological stress.
Stress doesn't give exact coordinates. Ducting doesn't predict a knockdown hours in advance. None of this fits.
He turned to the radio manuals, checking technicalities of VHF propagation. Nothing explained a transmission from his own vessel, in his own voice 8 hours before.
Maybe I am losing my mind. Solitude does that, but the storm was real. The wreckage is real.
He grew jumpy. A creak of the rigging, a slap of a wave, and he'd lurch toward the VHF, expecting that voice again. He tried to eat, but food tasted like ash. Tried to sleep, but the hiss of the radio invaded his dreams.
If it happens again, what will I do? How can you run from a warning that knows your future?
The silence was worse than the storm. It promised that the first transmission hadn't been the last. 2 days after the storm, the VHF crackled again. A familiar voice filled the cabin. Mayday, Mayday. This is sailing vessel Odyssey, abandoning vessel at position 18 degrees 12 north, 145 degrees 40 west. Losing all hands. This is final.
Losing all hands. I am the only hand on board.
He checked the GPS. The coordinates were 400 miles ahead, directly in his path.
It's not a warning this time. It's an obituary.
He grabbed the logbook and copied the transmission word for word, his writing barely legible.
The first Mayday came true. This one will too, unless I do something.
He sat back, staring at the numbers on the screen. The sea outside was calm, mocking him.
I have 2 days to decide. 2 days to avoid the coordinates of my own death.
The VHF went silent again. He didn't sleep that night. At dawn, with bloodshot eyes, Lucas unrolled the charts. He measured the death coordinates with a trembling divider.
400 miles ahead. If I stay on this heading, I'll arrive in 2 days and die.
He calculated fuel and range. A sharp detour north would add 3 days to the crossing, but it would take him well clear.
3 extra days. Starvation? Storms? It doesn't matter. I won't be at those coordinates.
With a red pencil, he drew a new line that carved a wide arc around the dead zone. His hand shook so badly the line was jagged.
I am defying a prophecy. Should I feel like I am cheating death, or sealing my fate?
He logged the course change with a note. Avoiding coordinates of second phantom transmission. May this be enough. He went topside and pulled the wheel hard over. Odyssey heeled gently onto her new heading, away from the grave.
The radio said I'd be lost at those coordinates. I am not going there. I refuse.
As the sails filled and the boat settled, Lucas looked back at the empty horizon. He had chosen. Whether it was salvation or a longer road to doom, he didn't know. 3 days north of the death coordinates, the VHF remained silent. Lucas's mind grew brittle.
There it is again. A voice in the static. No, just the wind.
A ship appeared on the horizon at dusk. He hailed it, but no answer came. By dawn, it was gone.
The water glowed green that night. I watched it for hours, waiting for something to speak.
He replayed the second Mayday, listening for any crack, any flaw. It was still his own calm voice.
What if I imagined it? What if I am running from nothing? Number. The first one was real. The storm was real. I trust the warning.
But trust is hard to hold when the sea offers no proof, only silence.
I escaped the coordinates, but I don't know if I escaped the fate.
He stared into the black water, whispering a question the ocean refused to answer. On the 15th morning after the storm, a sooty shearwater sliced across the bow. Land was near.
Seabirds. That means land is close. The silence on the radio has held so far.
He went below and played the digital recorder. Both Maydays played back, crisp and undeniable.
My voice. Predictions that came true. I didn't imagine this.
He stared at the small device, the proof of something impossible.
Something warned me. Maybe it wasn't a ghost. Maybe it was the future itself.
Through the salt-streaked porthole, the green slopes of Hilo rose from the sea.
Hilo. I made it. I escaped those coordinates. I am alive.
He didn't feel relief. He felt the weight of what he carried. Recordings, logs, a story no one would believe. Odyssey motored into the harbor, a battered survivor with a haunted captain.
Solid ground. But I can't relax until someone official hears this.
He secured the dock lines with methodical precision, nausea coiling in his stomach. In the cabin, he gathered the logbook and digital recorder, the only evidence he had.
These recordings are proof. They have to listen.
He looked back at Odyssey, her hull scarred, then up toward the Coast Guard station on the hill. The station building stood indifferent under the Hawaiian sun, a place of answers or denial. Lucas walked forward, clutching the evidence that could save others or brand him insane. He didn't wash up, didn't eat. The recorder and logbook were his priority.
This changes everything. I can't sail solo again. Not after this.
He climbed the steps, lungs burning with salt and fear, ready to face whatever came next. Inside the Coast Guard station, Officer Callahan sat behind a cluttered desk, his expression completely unreadable.
There's no shock in his eyes. He's seen this before.
Show me the logs and the recordings. Let's hear it.
Callahan flipped through the logbook slowly, pausing at the recorded Mayday entries. His face tightened almost imperceptibly.
This isn't the first report like this. For decades, solo sailors on long Pacific passages have described receiving their own distress calls before disaster strikes.
He's talking about it like it's routine, like describing the weather.
The officer's gaze drifted to a framed photograph on his desk. A young sailor, now marked deceased.
Off the record, the Coast Guard's standing policy is to log them as unexplained anomalies and continue normal operations. We don't investigate further.
They've known all along. They've kept it quiet, and I sailed right into it.
The silence that followed was heavier than any wave he'd faced at sea.
I am going to give you some advice, off the record. Don't dig into this. Don't go looking for others who've heard what you heard. It won't end well.
He knows more. There's a name he's holding back, someone else who survived, or didn't.
There was a sailor in the early 70s, a solo passage from California. His name was Walter. He reported the same kind of transmission before he was lost.
Lost? What happened to him? Did he get the second Mayday like I did? Did he ignore it?
That's all I can say. His file is sealed. I've already told you more than regulations allow.
Walter. A name. That's all I have. But it's enough to start digging.
Callahan stood and walked to the window, his back to Lucas, dismissing him without another word.
One more thing. If this has happened to so many, why isn't there a warning system? Why are sailors sent out alone into that?
Because no one would believe it. And even if they did, what warning would we give? To listen to your own ghost. Take my advice. Let it go.
Lucas left the station, carrying nothing but a logbook, a recorder, and a name that felt like a summons from the deep. The Maritime Archive was a dim room crowded with filing cabinets and the must of old paper. Lucas pored through indexes for any mention of Walter. He found a reference number in a logbook from 1971 and pulled a dusty box from the shelf. Inside was a folder. The tab read, Walter, M, USCGR, 71, Neckarly 0452. He opened it with trembling hands. Subject reported 2 emergency transmissions on VHF Channel 16, feature vector of his own voice, vessel name, and precise position, 8 hours prior to a severe squall that disabled his craft. A grainy photograph showed the wreckage of a sloop similar to Odyssey, mast broken, hull stove in.
He got the first Mayday too, but the report says he received a second, predicting loss of the vessel.
Lucas read the final entry. Vessel was lost with all hands at the coordinates given in the second transmission. No Mayday was ever transmitted from the vessel.
Walter ignored the second warning. He sailed right into his own death. That could have been me.
The report had been stamped, closed, unsolicited transmission protocols reviewed. The Coast Guard had filed it away like a weather log. He closed the file slowly, the weight of it pressing on his chest like deep water. Attached to the report were photocopies of Walter's own log entries, recovered from the wreckage. Received second phantom distress call, coordinates 400 miles ahead. I refuse to be intimidated by phantom voices. Maintaining course.
He thought it was a trick. His mind playing games. He didn't believe it could be real.
The final entry was dated 2 days later. The writing was shaky, the pressure uneven, storm approaching. Conditions matched transmission. No other vessels in range. I should have listened.
He realized too late. The moment he knew the warning was real, it was already over. I almost did the same. I almost dismissed it as a trick of the mind. The only difference is I turned the wheel.
A single choice, made in solitude, had meant the difference between life and a missing vessel report.
Why was I spared? Was it luck, or did something choose to warn me more insistently?
He closed the file and sat in the archive's hush, weighed down by a dead man's words and the impossible responsibility of surviving. That night, Lucas stood at the end of a weathered pier, watching the ocean churn with cold bioluminescence.
Time loop, premonition, some kind of cosmic warning system. None of it holds together.
He pictured the vast Pacific. From above, a single boat lost in blue, and the idea that the ocean itself might speak made his skin crawl.
If the ocean warned me, why me and not Walter? Why any sailor at all?
He felt a strange kinship with Walter, as if the man's final log entries were speaking directly across the decades.
Maybe his death wasn't meaningless. Maybe it was a message that reached me when I needed it.
But the idea felt too desperate, too much like a fever dream. He rejected it as surely as he rejected the notion of coincidence.
I'll never know. The answer is out there, and it's completely indifferent to my need to understand.
The dread settled into his bones, cold and permanent. He wasn't saved. He was recruited into a mystery that would never release him. He watched the bioluminescent waves until they blurred, carrying the weight of all the unanswered warnings stretching back into the deep. Aboard Odyssey, Lucas retrieved a manila envelope and laid it on the chart table. The time had come.
Taking this public would brand me delusional. The Coast Guard would bury it anyway.
He sealed the logbook and recorder inside. A tear tracked through the salt still caked on his face. He wrote on the front, "Do not open," followed by the date and his name.
Walter's logs, Callahan's warning, my recordings, all sealed in here. Maybe one day, someone will need to hear it.
He slid the envelope into his sea bag, burying it beneath a yellow Helly Hansen jacket.
No more solo passages. I won't ignore what I was told. The sea gave me a second chance.
The decision felt like a physical severing, as if a part of him stayed tethered to that envelope.
I loved the solitude, but I know now that I am never truly alone out there.
He sealed the bag and stepped off the boat, leaving behind the sailor he used to be. He walked the marina, past sailboats that once felt like kin.
Every boat holds a sailor who has never heard their own voice on Channel 16.
He passed a chandlery and felt no pull to enter. The want for new gear was gone, replaced by fear.
I used to love the smell of diesel and salt. Now it smells like a warning.
At the airline counter, he booked a one-way ticket to the mainland, his credit card shaking.
One way. No return. No delivery crew. The boat stays here until someone else claims her.
He arranged a delivery crew to sail Odyssey back, but didn't stay. The goodbye had been said in the cabin's silence. He walked out of the terminal, sea bag slung over his shoulder, the envelope a lead weight.
I feel like I am walking away from a grave, from Walter's, from the sailor I was.
He didn't look back. The ocean was behind him, its voice already settled in his head. Months after returning to the mainland, Lucas found himself in a dim seaside bar where old sailors gathered. He met a man with salt-scarred hands and eyes that had seen too much ocean. The old sailor spoke of a solo passage decades ago when his own voice had crackled over Channel 16, predicting a squall that came true. Then he leaned in and whispered, "The ocean remembers. Sometimes it sends back echoes to warn us. Most don't listen." A weight lifted from Lucas's chest. He wasn't the only one. Around the bar, other old sailors nodded in silence, confirming a shared unspoken truth. It was a brotherhood of the haunted, bound not by organizations, but by the sea's cryptic mercy. But the mystery only deepened. No one could explain the source, only that the warnings were real and deadly to ignore. That night, Lucas sat at home, staring at his framed Pacific chart, the coordinates now heavy with phantom voices. The ocean's echoes offered company, but no answers. He would never sail solo again, but the silence was finally shared. In the weeks that followed, Lucas couldn't stop thinking about Callahan's words and the dusty archive file.
They log it as an anomaly and move on. They've known for decades and done nothing.
He researched Coast Guard standing orders and found the policy was exactly as Callahan had described. Collect, classify, ignore.
They're afraid. Admitting these transmissions are real would mean admitting something beyond science.
For days he wrestled with the idea of going public. A newspaper article, a forum post, something to break the silence.
Who would believe a sailor with a recording? They'd say, it's a hoax, a cry for attention.
He pictured the stigma, the Coast Guard denying it, the sailing community dismissing him as unhinged.
I can't destroy myself over this. The sea gave me a warning. I listened. That has to be enough.
So he chose the same silence the Coast Guard had chosen. He became part of the cover-up. The envelope stayed sealed, the injustice simmered, but the secret was his to carry. On the morning of his flight from Hilo, Lucas walked to the Mariners' Memorial overlooking the bay. He scanned the bronze plaques until he found the name, Walter M. 1971, lost with all hands.
He was out there alone, just like me. He heard his own voice, and he didn't believe it.
From his jacket, he took a small manila envelope, a copy of his own logs, sealed and addressed to no one.
This is for you, Walter. Proof that I listened when you couldn't.
He crouched and placed the envelope at the base of the memorial, among shells and faded flowers.
I am sorry you didn't make it. I am sorry I did.
He stayed there a long moment, the weight of two sailors' fates pressing on the stone. Then he stood and walked away without looking back, the ocean wind chasing him. He left the copy of his logs behind, but carried Walter's name with him. The bond was silent, but it held. Lucas moved inland, far from the salt air. The framed Pacific chart became a museum of what he'd survived. His sea bag sat in a closet, the sealed envelope tucked behind yellow foul weather gear he never wore.
Sometimes, when the house is silent, I hear it, static on a radio that isn't there.
He'd turn off the lights and listen, but the static never became a voice. It was just absence.
No more dreams of waves, no more dreams of open water. Just the static and the waiting.
The sealed envelope stayed in the bag. He never opened it, but he knew it was there. He stopped looking at charts. He stopped reading sailing magazines. The ocean had become a stranger. The silence was broken only by the clock's ticking, each second a reminder of time he'd stolen.
I am alive. That has to be enough. But the static still waits for me, somewhere out there.
He kept the blinds drawn at dusk and never answered calls from unknown numbers. Far away on a Hilo dock, Odyssey swayed gently, her cabin dark and her decks unmanned. Inside, the VHF radio had been silent for months, a thin cobweb stretching across its dial. Then, at 3 in the morning, the speaker crackled to life. Mayday, Mayday. This is sailing vessel Wanderer, position 22 degrees 30 north, 150 degrees 02 west. Conditions unknown, require immediate assistance. The voice was faint, fractured but unmistakable. It did not belong to Lucas. The transmission ended as abruptly as it began, leaving only static and the soft hiss of the open channel. A single red light continued to blink on the panel, waiting. Outside, the boat rocked in the quiet marina. Another warning transmitted to a sailor who didn't yet know. The cabin fell dark again. The VHF waiting for the next voice that would crackle over the sea. And somewhere out on the Pacific, another solo sailor was destined to hear their own voice on Channel 16 before the first wave hit.